Good morning, everyone. Today we will do session 2 of separation of concerns. Last week we looked at listeners and handlers in JavaScript, and also at different function roles. I think I would like to go over those function roles first, because we will probably need them in this course, which is about refactoring. So let's go and see. Last week we looked at these different roles a function can have in our application. We have listeners, handlers, utilities, components, and custom events. Now, why are we looking at these? In refactoring, we will be splitting up our big one file into multiple files, and we will use these different functions as a guide to how we will split up these files. So let's go and look at the refactoring page. So has anyone ever heard of the word refactoring? Can anyone explain me what that means? Yeah. Can anyone explain refactoring? No one wants to try? Okay, refactoring is reworking your application so it becomes better. That's actually just the basics of what you want to do. And there are certain guides or rules on how you can make your application better. And what I mean with better is more clear for other people to understand, for example. So if you work on a project and you're making some websites, and there's suddenly a new developer, and that comes into the team, and he has to understand all the code you've already written. So if you don't use a certain pattern or design strategy, that new developer will most likely not like you very much. So you will want to make sure you make the code very clear for that person. So that's why refactoring will teach you on how to come into, maybe you're that developer that comes into a team and you get some website and you see, this is not exactly following a nice, clear separation of concerns. So you will want to know how to refactor that application and reorder it according to these. We will look at the separation of concerns in this session. So we will start today with an example. Sorry? Yes, okay, good points. Zoom. Share screen. There you go. Okay, and yeah, okay. Let's. Today we're going to start with one exercise, and I will do it together with you, so we can get into it. So I have opened the separation of concerns GitHub repo, and I will start with the exercise under data list items. And yes, okay. So here we have a very simple application. What this does here is if you click on list items, you get a pop-up and you can start adding items to this list. And when you click cancel, you will see another pop-up will display the list of the several items you have inserted. Okay, and this you can repeat again. So we of course we want to make sure after we have refactored the application that the application does exactly the same thing as before you refactored it. So the functionality needs to remain the same, but we want to have a nice structure in the code. So let's look at what we have right now. So here we see all the JavaScript code that makes this functionality happen is in one single file called the init file. Now we will want to make sure this is not all in the same file, but we want to split it up by function role. As you can see, we have a listener JavaScript file, a handler JavaScript file, also a logic and a data file. Logic is for more custom functions, and data will be more fixed values or actual data, like a list of names of people, like customers for a company. So that's not really, there will be no logic in there, just a list of things or fixed values. Okay, let's just go through what we have already. So here we have a fixed value, a bullet points, which is just an asterisk. Then we have an event listener and event handler, which will be handling the logic. And inside of that handler, we have several parts of the code which have actually different functions. The first is to read and process user input. Second one is to execute some logic on what you have read. And of course, the last one is to also, after processing the data, to show it again to the user. Now, what we'll want to do is split these several things up. And the first one, I've maybe already said it twice, but what do you guys think of this fixed value? Where should it go, you think? Yes, indeed. So we're just going to move this one. And yeah, we also have a hint here. So let's just replace this completely. And then we need the export one to be able to use it. Like this, okay. And then let's look at the listener and handler. Do you guys know where the listener stops and where the handler starts? So we have add event listener. It's for the function, the event click. But which part is the handler here? So the entire function here is a handler, indeed. So let's just start with putting all this code directly into the handler. And you see here, we already get a hint again. So we want to replace this. So we have a list handler. Now we've done some changes. We will want to, wait, let me see. In the init file, we now want to make a reference to the handler. So the name is list handler. So I'm going to put the name here, so it's a reference, but this won't work yet. Does anyone know what we need to do here? Yes, so indeed we need a reference from the init file to the handler file. So it's an import statement to handler.js. Now this list handler will be known. And let's see, now we've already changed the structure of the file. Now we have references from one file to the other. So we started with, let's see, on the right, can you see that? Let me minimize this. So when we started, we just had an init file. and it didn't have any references to other files. It was just standalone. All the logic was inside of that one. Now I've already changed the reference, and I will see if I run the command to update this graph. Now you see the init file has an import, so a reference to the handler. So it's going to use the handler. Okay, let's see. Put this out of the way. And we can already check, will our website still work? Oh, we get an error. That's, let's see. Aha. So there's an error because there is a reference to the utils.js file. Let's see where that reference is. Probably be here. Utils. Okay, so we just loaded into the application the handler.js file because we made a reference to it. Now we see we want a list from the utils.js, but that's a file that doesn't even exist. So let's see what this should be normally. I think it will be from the listener probably. Oh no, from the logic file. So let's fix that. Here it will be logic. Okay, we can refresh. Normally, yes. So the error was solved, but now we get a different one. List handler is not defined. So let's go here. Will be in the in the list. The listener list handler is not defined because let's see in the handler. Wait a second, let's see. Yeah, let's first split up the rest of the code. So we have some code to read and process the user input, some code to execute the core logic, which will logically go into the logic file. Let's see. What we want here is we want to list all this. And then, of course, we need to make a reference here to lists. Yes, list. And then you can see we are importing the function list from the logic.js file. Okay. And then, yes, we also have the bullet points, which was being used in here. So now we don't need this import anymore from the in the handler file, but we want to use it in the listener. No, it's not in the listener, in the logic file. And then you see the import will now be used here. Okay. Okay, that looks good. Now, the listener itself, we want to put in the listener file. So if we go to the init file again, we left something here. Yes, so the listener is also something we want to put together in one big file, because in the future, of course, your application will no longer be this simple. We will have a lot of listeners and a lot of handlers. So it's interesting to bundle them together into one file. So let's take this listener, put it here. And then you can see that's now, okay, there's already an import with the hint that we will use the list handler from the handler.js. So now in the init file, we won't need the handler, but we want the listener, because the listener will be added. And then in a chain, you will see the listener we'll call the handler, which we want to reference in the listener file. And then, of course, in the handler itself, button, in the handler, we will execute the logic, which will then reference the logic file. So you can see references to different files of course, necessary to make the refactoring work. Again, let's look at the dependency graph. Now I've made all these references. You will see after I update it. Oh, a nice row. Look at that. We have the initial, the init.js, which is referencing the listener, which is referencing the handler, which is referencing logic, and that in turn is referencing the data file. So that's how references here work. Okay, let's see if our application is working. We don't get an error. Let's try it. Okay, so now we have two list items. Okay, there's still an error. So this is normal, right? So when you are refactoring an application, this is the process that will go through, like, oh, something is wrong. Yeah.
Normally it's import and then the name of the function in brackets and then from but we're going straight for the name of the file. Is that because of having too many listeners?
Yeah, for example, so in this way you are just saying give me everything from this file, all the functions. If you want a specific one, you can make it like indeed like in a different example. Here you want to specifically from logic, I want this function. That's the difference indeed. Okay, so as I was saying, this is normal. This is you have to debug the stuff if you're reworking an application. It usually happens that you're breaking something if you move some code from one place to another. So you need to keep this in mind and use, for example, the console here to debug what is going wrong. And what is going wrong here? Let's see, all inputs is not defined. If you go to the logic file, all inputs, okay, all inputs. This will probably be somewhere in the handler. Yes, all inputs was defined here, and we moved this code here. So how do you think we can solve this? We have a variable. That's an example, but we could also, we have a function here. A function we can pass through a parameter. So let's take the all inputs here. And then, of course, if we want to use it, we're going to have to pass it here as a variable. Let's name it all inputs. That should be enough. Okay, now we have it in this function. And okay, let's save it. Save all files. Okay, let's try it again. Again, an error. So string list is not defined. You can see here, the string list is being initialized inside of the logic, but we will need it in the end to show it to the user here, the string list. So what this means is we could just do it like this: string list equals list all inputs, because we want to return string list here. Okay, let's try it again. Save all. No. List items. Okay, and let's see. Okay, we have our functionality back. And all the code is now nicely split up in the separate files. Okay, I think that's, are there any questions maybe? From the people online, maybe?
I have a question.
Mhm.
The file data.js is to read the data from or to write the final data?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Data.js. Are we reading the
Yes.
data from this file, yes, or we are writing the data to this file?
I didn't quite catch that, so can you say that again?
Do we need or do we use this file to write the data on it or to read from this file, the data, to read it from this file? Yes, data.js.
Why do we use it? Okay, it's we want to. It's a very basic example, of course. Just putting an asterisk in it, but this could contain more complex data. But it's just a way. We don't want to put our logic files full of predefined values or fixed values. So it's just nice to put them somewhere apart. So if you are using them, for example, it's also for reusing fixed values. If you define it in a central way, you can use it in all different files. If you put it in a listener's JavaScript file, then it would be strange because sometimes maybe a different the logic file will have to reference the listener's file, but just to use the asterisk. So it's logic to have this in a central place, in a separated place, so we can reference it from all the different logic, all the different function JavaScript files. Is that clear?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Yes?
So I would like to know what are the types reference on shorthand or as we saw with the standard CSS and in the CSS
yeah. So we have the initial JS, the init.js, which will be the entry point for the application to start with all the logic. So this is initial, the word says it itself. You have an initial point, and from there you will reference the other logic files. And you can see here in the dependency graph, it's a bit small maybe, but yeah, don't see a zoom, Control+, let's see. Yeah, that's better. So you can see here the reference. You always start at the init.js, and it won't always look like a nice row. There will be splits, and sometimes the init will also reference something different. But normally, in this way, you will know all the files you have are linked and will be used. Is that sufficient? Okay. Okay, anything else?
And the graph should always be linear like this?
No. So as I just said, it doesn't. Normally, in a real application, it won't be exactly linear with referencing the one after the other. It will be more like a tree graph referencing multiple files. For example, we could think like a handler needs data, but the listener also needs data, so it will be a split tree graph. And you were saying?
Can you show again how to get this graph?
Yeah. It was some Googling work for me too, before I could make it work. So I think, Yelena, you sent me, let's see if I can find it. Indeed. So if you want to use the tool I am using here, in every exercise of the refactoring repository, there will already be a dependency graph SVG, which is a scalar vector graph, I think, which is just yeah. You can see it is in code how this is built up. And it will, if you want to install it, I can maybe put it in the Zoom call also. Yeah, if it wants to work again. Yeah. At the top, okay, chat, yes. So yeah, this one will add it to this specific project indeed with the save dev. So it will add it to the dev dependencies of this specific project, but so just yeah, I think you can install it globally with the -g, but this is safer. So this is just a dependency, an npm package that will do the dependency graph of your application for you. So if you want to, I will also put the npm run documents, which is, it wasn't what I wanted. No, that was also not what I wanted. Okay, let's try again. Copy. I can do the chats. Yeah, okay, so this is an example that you need to replace the path with the path of your specific exercise. So inside of that exercise, you will update the dependency graph. It's just a useful tool. This is not mandatory. You don't have to use the dependency graph, but it's an easy way to see how is how are my files connected to each other. Okay. Okay, great. I think you guys can now start with going through the other exercises. Another question, yes? Yes, so data is something fixed, some value that will, it's not exactly fixed, maybe not the right word. Data is something, yeah, it's a value. Data will contain values, so it can be my name, it can be, oh, we want a special character that we want to define, and it's a hyphen, or it's an asterisk. It's a value, and logic is a process that will transform data. For example, it's the functions you have seen before that will take some input, transform it, and output it. It's the logic. So it's a process. And data is a value. That's the difference. Okay. So let's start with the exercises. I don't know how we will split up. Maybe people can go in other rooms, or we can sit with some people. You have a proposal? Okay, let's. Let's go over reverse engineering in short when while we finish. So today we learned refactoring, taking an existing application and trying to make it a bit more separated, so you have different roles in different files. An extension of that is reverse engineering, where you will take also an existing application that is, in this case, very dirty. It's not easy to read. It's not clear what the application does. The code is jumbled. Everything is put in one file, for example. the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript is all dumped in one file. And now you have to do the same exercise, but a bit more work and putting everything in their own respective files. Yes, the README on GitHub tells you a lot of useful hints on how to look at it. Yeah, of course, you have to go. It's best you run the app first, because it probably will work, but it will just be very dirty code. So try, as you did with refactoring, running it to see what should it do, and then you can see how is it written, and then you'll see, okay, that's not good. Let's throw away what we have, or let's use certain parts of what we have and try to rewrite this in a very clean way. Just a small example. I opened one of the examples or the exercises, and you can see there's a lot of folders and separated folders where you can put some stuff. So the idea is, of course, you will do the same split up again. You have the handlers folder, the init folder, the listeners folder, where you can put your JavaScript file, for example. But now, when you just open the project, you can see, oh, okay, here we have the HTML. Okay, there's a style element. Okay, and then you go a bit lower. Oh, okay, there's a script element. Just what is this function? What is happening here? Yeah. So it's just it's a mess, and you have to clean up that mess. So, yeah. If anyone
ever wrote this in Python,
the function, like it's a function with some very obscure names.
so do you guys get some of the ideas?
What you will need to do. Okay, perfect.
Then I will now give the word to Yasin, who will show us how to run this inside of Visual Studio.
I will stop sharing and give you the HTML.
Yeah. For this. All right, guys. Do I have to show it on Zoom? Yeah, I think I also have to share my screen. Good. If you guys can see my, you can see my screen on Zoom. Okay, let's kind of figure out how to run tests inside of Visual Code and how to debug it also. It's kind of tricky to set up, so I suggest we start from a new clean file folder. Okay, so everyone open desktop and make a folder called testing or whatever. I'll do it with you. Here, new folder, and call it testing or reference or whatever. Okay, that folder we want to open it with VS Code. There are 20 ways to do it. One that I like is just take the folder and put it over VS Code, and then it opens it magically. All right. We have a getting started thing. And just take Zoom out of the way. All right. Here we want to make a new file. So we want to run tests inside of Visual Code. Tests are also run from a library, the library called Jest. So with me, go to your browser and Google Jest. Just Google it. And I'll do it with you, sorry. Or just documentation, whatever. You see the getting started link. I want you to do it with me so that you also know how to do it on yourself. So that's why we're kind of taking a detour. All right, you see the getting started page. Everyone sees it.
Yes.
If you don't, raise your hand. Okay. You want to look at this line specific. Copy it or click on the button. Go into your Visual Code. Open your terminal. If you don't know, you can kind of, you see, if you go down, just 1 second, I'll change my, sorry, just a second. Maybe this is clear. You see here, you can open, if you hover over this, you can kind of open it like this. But if you can't, just go into a terminal, new terminal, yeah, whatever. Okay, inside of here, we want to paste what we just copied. npm install save dev just whatever. You enter. Should work, takes a while. Also check that you're inside of the testing folder. It should be okay for if you did the little hover thing that I did. So I hope everyone is running it right now. And I hope you guys have a faster laptop than me.
Done. Do we get a prize? Do we get a prize? When
We get a prize. We won't get a prize.
Bummer.
Maybe an error message.
Exactly.
But yeah, do you guys know what we are doing right now? We are installing the Jest library inside of this project. So that's what's happening. And Jest is the framework that's used to run tests. Simple as that. You will probably see a Node modules folder, which is automatically added here on the left. You can see it. We don't have to touch that. It's just what we are importing right now and where the libraries are concentrated. So sometimes if you get in the future, not right now, you don't have to worry about it, but in the future, if you have like problems with libraries, you can just delete that folder and reinstall it again, and then it should work. Okay, we have a Node modules and a package log JSON thing. Don't worry about it. Let's go back to the Jest documentation. So this is documentation, by the way. You can read through it, but for right now, let's make a new file named sum.js inside of the folder. So if we go here and we make a new file, call it sum.js. Okay. All right. Scroll down inside of the documentation. We have another file, sum.test.js. Let's make it. I'm going fast through it, so I'll wait 30 seconds. So what I did is I made 2 empty files.
No, I can't see the meter on mine.
Okay, let's
The node
no problem.
modules
Leave it
and
like that
the-
for now.
They didn't show up on mine.
If you don't have it, don't worry about this right now. Let's first get through everything.
It doesn't look like this. Mine just looks like this.
One is sum.js, one is sum.test.js.
You don't have them
No,
on JS.
this one I just made myself, but I don't have the node modules and the.
Maybe npm run first.
Yeah, I'll come to that, yeah. But if you guys have the 2 test files, does somebody not have it yet? Okay, let's just take your time.
Do anything? Oh. Should I try and run it again, the install?
Yeah, the npm install, yeah.
And I am in the right, I am in the unit testing library I just made.
And it will fail at everybody and I'll have to look at it.
Unit testing, some JS, no, she doesn't have the models and the some test.
The sum test, I think he made it, right?
In
The
a folder.
Sum.js, I just made it myself.
Niet heel het PC.
Yes, I'm in the right folder, unit testing.
Ah, ja, denk ik toch. Ik heb nog nooit gewerkt.
Yes, that one I created.
Ah, ja.
Wait,
Oké, configureren.
what?
Did you create it yourself?
Yes,
This,
yes.
I
some
created
tests,
myself.
some
Yes,
tests,
yes,
then
yes,
you have
definitely.
So
to-
it's just sum.test.js.
Under
Okay,
coding.
yeah, but
But
you
why
have to
doesn't it
create
say
the
coding?
sum.test.js file as well.
Yeah,
No, the sum.test.js file also.
oh, some test. .js. No, why is it, why isn't it, that's weird. How do you go back? Like CD is go forward. How do you go back?
Dot.
Dot.
CD dot.
CD dot. Yeah, why is that? It says Mac Air unit
CD.
testing. Because look here, unit testing is inside coding, which is inside my desktop.
Did you drag and drop it from?
No,
You can try it.
I just made I don't know what I did. But wait, this is in,
Just drag and drop it in your
okay. Shall I close this?
So you can open it from here,
Can I,
open folder.
can I just like this?
Yeah.
Add folder workspace or copy or
Yeah, add it.
add it? No, there's something wrong. I don't know why it says it like this.
Is it making it, this is making it bigger?
It's smaller, this bigger.
Where's your file? Where do you see the files?
Yeah, the files should be here. But they are not.
Like, you don't have the navigation on top?
This
Oh,
one?
yes.
Ah,
This one
Yeah.
is?
that's the one I took. But that's the one we're in.
Close this down, I'm gonna do it once again.
Mm.
Oh my God.
Maybe I will try and, wait. I'm just gonna try to go out completely to delete this one and do something different because I think it did something wrong here. But why isn't it on my desktop? I put it on my desktop, coding. And then I just wanted to put it here. And then,
It is.
right,
Go inside and then just run it.
Thank you.
okay. Oop. Exciting, come on. And then I have to run the thing,
Yeah.
open the terminal, and we are in it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I will try and install it. again.
Where are your two files?
Yeah, that's, I don't get the one. Some test.
All right. Let's go back to the documentation page.
Press up.
In documentation page, you see a code sample on sum.js. Copy it. It's just a simple sum, some function and sum, and it exports it. We have already seen this type of thing. You put it not in test, you put it in sum.js. Make sure you pick the right. For the people who are
And if I
kind
try
of
to-
behind, I'll go over it individually. Okay, so we've added this code inside of sum.js. Once we have done that, we can add also this code
That's weird.
inside of the sum test.js file.
Code again.
Nothing in here should be absolutely.
Install,
Inside of here, we run a test. We call it add 1 + 2 should be equal to 3. An anonymous function, we've seen this. we expect this method to be true. All right, that's what happens here. Save it. We save with Control S. We don't right click and save. Okay, now that that's done, you see the package dash log.json. That's something that's generated for you. You want to right click and make a new file called package.json. JSON. When I say JSON, is JSON like this. Okay, just make a new file called this, and copy what's inside of the documentation. Okay. Like that. Now we save again with Control S. Do I have to zoom in a little?
What did I have to put in there? Oh, here.
You don't have to type this, it's inside of the documentation. You can just copy it. All right?
Yeah.
All right. So what happened? We made a test, made a function that we will test, and we installed the library. That's what happens right now. Okay. So we are here. Let's copy this npm run test. Copy it, or we can type it if you want inside of the terminal. And if you do that,
Where did he get that from? Is this where he got it from?
Can you go down?
Hmm?
Oh, you didn't.
I didn't get that yet, no. I'm behind.
so you've seen, I just made a test run and it passed. Okay.
What's your test?
Okay.
It was already there, then you can just edit it. Yeah, just add, if it's a new folder, right? Yeah,
And
we'll
then
just
he said,
Control A, remove everything and add the one that.
Function as well, so go back to the website.
Mhm. That was here. Yeah.
So guys, this is following documentation of a library and implementing it. This you will, if you are working on your project or if you are working professionally, this you will do this constantly.
And then, cool.
Or maybe it's new now, but
Then I run
okay.
npm test. No?
And if you were able to run the test, you succeeded. If you have this, when you run the npm run test,
Now try.
you are successful. Then we have something a little more to run it at debugging, but I will just check with everybody if this works already. Okay.
Yeah. No such file as directory for package.
No, there's something really wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, settings JSON and package JSON. And you don't have node models inside your.
Did I make 5,000?
I think.
5,000 changes. That's how busy I've been. 5K.
I think what you have to do is run a npm install in here,
Yeah.
and then the npm install will be everything.
You have to run npm install
In the MacBook. Why is it not in the documents where I put it?
See it
I don't
here.
get it.
Why don't I see the node models?
Yeah, exactly. I don't get it. That makes no sense. This is not perfect. This is very bad.
work, that makes no sense.
Yes.
Jason, guess we can close. I don't think we need it.
Yassine, do you still need to explain something to the group, or is it?
Yes, I still have, like, if you have 5 minutes more, I will how to run tests inside of Visual Code. So guys, if you have we have seen how to do tests, I think 4 weeks ago. If you set up the way that we did just right now and you run it in terminal, it should work. Or you can just add tests to this folder and it will run also. For the people who want to specifically debug, you have a question?
So we just write the tests in the some test folder.
Yeah.
And import.
You can import it, or you can make a new folder and set it up like this. But every new project or folder, you have to set it up first.
Well,
Yeah, it should work. I don't know if it's well. Yes, another question?
Yes,
I haven't written any test yet.
in my
but,
NPM.
I will try it.
Yeah.
I have the pass command is not found.
I will come to you.
Another
specifically
module, yeah,
later.
it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more thing, guys, because it's already 4. I will just go over it, and if we can't, for the people who don't, it doesn't work, I will go to you one by one, and if we can't figure it out, we can maybe start with the lesson next week, if it's okay, when we're all at home and in a blanket. All right, for specifically wanting to debug it, it's a little bit more tricky. Daniel, you know, it's so you have to configure a file. Let me just kind of open it. Sorry. So what you should do, and I will just do it, and then we'll figure it out individually because it's already 4. What you should do is you should go to the debug and run. Click on this, create a new launch.json file. Click anything, Node.js, I think always. Paste a certain launch JSON file that I found online. Save it, and then you could technically put a breakpoint inside of the test or inside of the whatever. You put breakpoints inside of your code, and then run it. Just.tests is a configuration file that I didn't. This always happens. Debug anyways. It's a configuration file that I found online. I didn't invent it or anything. If you run, you recognize these symbols inside of Chrome, remember? Takes a while, and now you can see my first breakpoint, it's there. And if I continue, if I do the steps, it does what we do inside of the browser, inside of Chrome. Now it's kind of tricky to set up. Actually, this is kind of simple because oftentimes it's even more difficult. But this just, I want to show you how we do the setup for it. I will go through for the people where it doesn't work individually if you want it to work. And for specific questions, we can maybe extend it to next week if needed. All right. If it didn't work, don't worry about it.
Next week, there will be a part about testing specifically. So if you're not completely up to date with this, we'll go over it again if necessary. Then, yeah.
All right.
Okay. I think that's it for today. Thanks for